everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Alex and today I am bringing you my May wrap up. Now the month of May was incredibly busy for me. As you guys know, as I'm sure you are tired of hearing me talk about, we have moved into a new house. So we spent the entire month of May getting ready to close on the house. We closed on May 15th and then we spent the rest of the month moving in. So we are here now, we have made it in, but as far as reading goes, the whole moving thing did put me in a little bit of a reading slump, but even still, that being said, I somehow managed to make it through 15 books in the month of May. So we're going to go about this in the way that we always do. I'm first going to direct you to my mid-May wrap-up. If you've not seen it, I'm going to link it in a card above for you. You're definitely going to want to go and watch that because I have already spoken about several of these books in detail in that video. I won't be talking about them again here, just very, very briefly. So if you have not seen that video yet, I'll link it up above. Go watch it first. But I will quickly recap those books for you, the ones that I've already talked about. We'll talk about some stats that encompass all the books I read in May, and then we'll go ahead and review the books that I read in the last 2 weeks of May. But before we get into the video, if you're new here and you're not already, be sure to go down to the subscribe button as well as the bell icon down below so that you never miss out on any of my content. And without further ado, let's get started. So before we get into the books, I do want to talk to you guys about some stats for my reading in May. And this does encompass every single book that I read in the month, not just the ones that I'm going to be going in depth on in this video. So let's start out with source. So this is telling you guys where exactly I got each of these books from. By far, my most popular source this month was Libby, whether that be audiobooks or ebooks. 10 of the 15 books that I read in May came from Libby. I also had 2 books come from NetGalley, 1 came from Libro FM, and 1 came from my bookshelf. As far as format, audiobook, as it usually is, was definitely my most consumed format. I read 9 audiobooks this month, as well as 1 physical and 5 ebooks. As far as age range, I mostly read adult this month with 7. Close behind was YA with 6, and then I had 1 new adult and 1 middle grade. As far as genres, we were pretty all over the place, but the winner this month was fantasy with 6. I also had 3 contemporary and 2 horror, which is really weird for me. I also had 1 book each of mystery, thriller, historical fiction, classic, and sci-fi. Finally, as far as ratings, I did have a pretty successful rating month as far as ratings go. The lowest that I gave was a 3-star, and I only gave 1 book 3 stars. I did have 3 books that I gave 3.5 stars. I had 7 4-star reads, 2 4.5 star, and 2 5-star. So first we're going to go through all the books that I have already covered in my mid-May wrap-up. I talked about 7 books in that video. So the first book that I read in May was The Chain by Adrian McKenty, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Call of the Wild by Jack London, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The King of Crows by Libba Bray, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Breath Like Water by Anna Jarzab, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And The Selection by Kira Cass, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. So after I completed the selection, I started in on Mr. Penumbras' 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. This book follows our main character, Clay, and it takes place right around 2008 in the Great Recession, and Clay used to work in the web and the tech industry in San Francisco, but because of the recession, he lost his job and he has to find a new way, so he winds up coming to work at Mr. Penumbras' 24-Hour Bookstore. The bookstore is open 24 hours, and he is a night clerk, so he's there all night long, and he is tasked with keeping a record of every single person that comes in. Very, very detailed, very specific about who they are, what they look like, what book they just turned in, and what book they are coming to get. Very, very specific, and Clay starts to kind of unravel what everything means. There's a little bit of a deeper connection than there might be on the surface. I listened to this book on audio and it was really, really quick to get through. It definitely kept me coming back for more. The narrator, I don't remember who it was, but he did a pretty good job. But the book in general just didn't grasp me like I really wanted it to. In general, I tend to really like books about books. So I had really high hopes for this one going in, but it just didn't grab me in the way that I wanted it to. I didn't find that I really got attached to any of the characters, and just in general, the plot didn't go exactly in the way that I thought that it would or that I wanted it to. It was just unexpected, but not necessarily in a good way. It wasn't bad by any means. I mean, I enjoyed my time reading it, but I didn't want to come back to it. Like when I would get in the car, usually I listen to audiobooks in the car. When I got in the car, I didn't find myself wanting to listen to it. I would rather listen to music or a podcast instead. So it did not grasp me like I wanted it to. I don't know if that's just because of the audiobook or if I would have felt the same way reading it in print, but regardless, this book was fine, but it's probably something that I'm gonna forget about pretty quickly. I will say that I enjoyed the writing style, and I know that Robin Sloan has at least one other book out called Sourdough that I am really interested in. We'll probably pick up at some point in the future. But overall, this one was just okay. I wound up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed was The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, and this is the second book in the Mistborn series, trilogy, something. So obviously I cannot say a ton about the plot of this because it would be very spoilery considering it's the second book in the series, but I'll just tell you that we follow our main character, Vin. Now, if you have read Brandon Sanderson before, or if you know anything about Brandon Sanderson, you will know that he crafts these incredible, fantastic worlds, and this is absolutely no exception. Absolutely loved getting to go back into this world with these characters and see where things are picking up after the events of the first novel. Really loved getting to get more into the heads of Vin and Eland and some of our other main characters. It was phenomenal, just like Brandon Sanderson's work always is. This book in particular has a lot of political intrigue that I was really into, so I really enjoyed seeing that. Definitely, again, intrigued by the third book that I'm going to hopefully be reading in the next couple of months. These books are chunkers. This book is about 750 pages long, a little bit more than that, but it's so worth it. If you are looking to get into adult high fantasy, please don't be scared. These are phenomenal. I'm not giving this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I completed was My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. Now, this book is a historical fiction, emphasis on the fiction. This is a retelling of Lady Jane Grey, who was queen for 9 days before she was beheaded. She was a real historical figure, but these authors have taken her story and turned it on its head, put some magical elements in there, and just completely transformed how we think of the story. And it was so good. I've been hearing a lot about this novel over the past several years. I think it came out in 2016, but I really wanted to get into it, and it was exactly what I needed. The audiobook narrator in this is phenomenal. She does the perfect accents. All of her voices are really distinct, and she's really flamboyant and just expressive and everything that you need for a story like this. She made me want to come back and continue listening and be in the story. It was hilarious, laugh out loud funny at times. So if you need to pick me up and you haven't read these yet, I definitely recommend this one. This is a series. The next book is My Plain Jane, which follows Jane Eyre, and the one after that that's coming out in July, I think, is My Calamity Jane. And then I just heard that they're going to be doing another trilogy about different ladies named Mary throughout history, which is going to be really interesting. I am obsessed with this. It was so good. If you haven't experienced it yet, I would definitely recommend the audio. It was really quick, so fun, the perfect pick-me-up. I wound up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Fantastic Land by Mike Bakoven. Now, this book is not one that I intended to pick up this month. I actually picked it up because I'm a big fan of the Currently Reading podcast. If you're looking for a bookish podcast, by far my favorite, go subscribe to them. It's incredible. But one of the ladies on the podcast talked about this novel, and it pretty much broke the internet. After she talked about it, there were a group of about 50 of us listeners and the other host that got in on a buddy read on this one over on Facebook, and then this book sold out on Amazon, I'm pretty sure, and Book Depository and a couple other places. Pretty sure it broke the internet, but regardless, this was way out of my comfort zone, but so good. Fantastic Land follows this amusement park called Fantastic Land. It is a competitor with like Universal Studios and Disney World, and there is a group of teenagers and young adults mainly that have volunteered. They are on the staff at Fantastic Land, and they have volunteered that if there is ever a natural disaster, that they will be the ones to stay behind at the park and wait for help to arrive. They will get paid for every single hour that they were there, and it just sounds like a dream because nobody ever thinks that this is actually going to happen. They think they're too far inland for a hurricane and nothing's ever going to happen. But by the time that this book comes around, there has been a really deadly hurricane that hits the shores. These people are stranded in Fantastic Land. They imagine that they're only going to be there for a weekend or so. They wind up being stranded for a month, and chaos ensues. Now, if it tells you anything about what you can expect from this novel, this is a horror novel, and that's why I said it's totally out of my comfort zone because I do not typically read horror, but this was really good. Definitely not for sensitive people. If you don't like gore and really graphic descriptions of violence, then you will not want to read this book, but I really enjoyed it. And if you do decide to pick it up, definitely go for the audiobook. It is available on Scribd if you're here in the US. It was so good, and just to put it in perspective on how good it was for you, I originally thought that this was a full cast audiobook, only come to find out earlier today that there are actually only two narrators. There's a male narrator and a female narrator, and they do all the voices, but I legit thought it was a full cast. So that just tells you how incredible this audiobook was. This book is told in an interview style format, so we are hearing from meteorologists and news reporters and people that worked at the park, getting all of their input on this really horrific event. It was just so good. This is one of the times that I stepped outside of my comfort zone and it totally paid off. So if you've read this one, please talk to me about it because I just keep thinking about it. It's been like 2 weeks since I've read it. I keep thinking about it. I want more like this. It was so, so good. I wound up rating this one a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna bump it up to at least a 4.5. The next book that I completed in the month of May was The Elite by Kira Cass. This is the second book in the Selection series, and I think everybody and their mom has pretty much been reading the series right now after we got news of the adaptation. I had already read the Selection. I read it earlier this month, and that one was a reread for me. This was a brand new read, the second book in the series. I did really enjoy this, but I will say I enjoyed the Selection more than this, but the ending definitely redeemed it and made me want to continue on into the one. I obviously know how things end because I know of other things that happen on down the line. Regardless, I did enjoy this one. I didn't feel a whole lot of second book slump. I was definitely interested enough to continue. Felt like there was enough plot to give us more interaction into this world. Granted, a week or so-ish removed, I don't remember a ton about what happened. I remember the very ending, which is how I know that I'm excited for the next one. But regardless, this one was good, enjoyed it, definitely preferred the Selection though. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was an e-arc, so thank you to NetGalley, the author and the publisher, for sending me a review copy of I Know Your Secret by Ruth Heald. This book is set to release on June 10th. This book follows our two main characters, Beth and Danielle. Beth is a therapist who is trying to figure her life out after her husband tells her that she wants a divorce. So she is trying to keep up with her clients, deal with her marriage falling apart, and raise a child all at the same time. We also get to follow Danielle, who is one of Beth's patients. Danielle has her own issues going on in her marriage and some dark stuff in her past. The two ladies come together and it's a thriller, so you can kind of see where this is gonna go. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest. I enjoyed this thriller okay. It was fine, but it was not the most thrilling thing that I've ever read. I would still consider myself to be an amateur in the mystery thriller genre. I do not read a ton of them, but I found this one really boring, found it quite predictable, to be honest, and I usually am one that I'll go exactly where the author takes me, and if the author intends for there to be a twist, I usually don't see it coming. I saw these coming. There were some twists that definitely caught me off guard, but the initial ways that the web starts to get tangled, I did kind of predict. And then there were stuff further down along the lines that I did not predict. So it was still kind of twisty and mystery thrilling. And the reviews on Goodreads for this are really positive, but I just felt like it was okay. It was just fine. I actually got some deja vu reading the beginning of this because it just seemed pretty generic to me in the beginning. The writing style was not exactly my favorite thing. It could have been a little bit more descriptive in my opinion, but that's just a personal thing. I don't know. Regardless, this one was fine. If it sounds interesting to you and if you like domestic thrillers, then you might be interested in it. But if not, it might be one that you can skip. I'll end up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemore. Now, this book follows our main character, Una, and her birthday is on New Year's. So we start out on New Year's Eve at 1982, and whenever the clock strikes midnight, Una finds herself in another year, literally. So it's not just that it's jumped from 1982 to 1983. Una jumps from 1982 to I think 2004, and she winds up living a year in 2004, and once that year is up, she jumps back to like 1991, and she completely jumps out of order in her life. So when we're following her story, everybody else in her life is obviously living in a linear timeline, but Una is jumping into her different bodies. I feel like this is really hard to explain, but she will always be in that year, that old in her body. So in the 80s, she's in her 20s. So like in 1982, I think she's like 19 or 20. So then whenever it's 2004, her body is 40, but her mind is still 21. And then she'll jump back to 1991, and so her body is like 28 or 30 or whatever, but her brain is only 22 because it's actually only been a year. I hope that that makes sense because it was really confusing for me. But regardless, we pretty much just follow her trying to figure life out and trying to kind of navigate her relationships when she's only ever really there for a year at a time. This book was just okay to me. It was really confusing, and I think that that was part of why I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought that I would, because it was genuinely hard for me to keep up with that she was a certain age on the outside, and then her head, she's a different age, and I had to remember the characters that she has already met or is not supposed to have met yet, or what she's supposed to know and not know. It did wind up getting confusing in that regard. I also definitely found that I preferred Una's years in the 2000s and the 2010s as opposed to the 80s and 90s. That's just a time period that I don't really care that much to read about, so I definitely preferred the 2000s and 2010s. And I also just feel like, in addition to the book being confusing, I just wanted more explanation on just how it worked in general, because like everything just kept happening, and the whole time I just kept thinking, but how? Like, but how is this real? And how has this already happened to the other people in her life if she hasn't lived that year yet? It was very confusing for me just in general, and I think that's the biggest qualm that I had with this. The writing style was pretty good, and it kept a good, even pace, I thought. So in the future, I would read more from this author. I believe this is a debut. I would be open to reading more from her, but this one, it just didn't hit the mark for me, and I wound up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The last book that I completed in the month of May was Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. Now, I know that I'm the last person on earth to read this novel, but I finally have, and I'm really, really glad that I did. So if you haven't read this novel, if you somehow are even behind me, this book is set in 1999, and it follows our main characters, Jennifer and Beth. They work together, they're emailing back and forth at work, and our other main character, Lincoln, has been hired by this company to be their IT guy and to monitor their emails. So anytime an email comes through the system that has a certain word or phrase in it, it'll be flagged, sent to Lincoln to make sure that nobody's breaking any rules or whatever. Well, a lot of Jennifer and Beth's emails are getting flagged because they are not talking about work-related content, they're just using it for their personal communication. It goes to Lincoln, he reads them, and he gets really, really invested in them and their stories, and he finds himself starting to fall for one of them. Now, I know this book I feel like has quite a bit of controversy around it, but I thought that it was really cute. I enjoyed it. I think that if you can suspend your disbelief a little bit, that you would enjoy this one, because let's just face it, it is really creepy that this guy is starting to fall in love with this girl for reading her emails that she doesn't even know that he's reading. It is creepy, it is weird. So yeah, if you can just suspend your disbelief, I think that you would enjoy this. The romance is actually really cute, and I really enjoyed getting to know the characters. All three of our main characters have really distinct personalities, and they're all really fun and unique. Really just enjoyed getting to know all of them. And just in general, this is just another hit from Rainbow Rowell. There's never been something that I've read from her that I just haven't enjoyed, and this is the same. It's not my favorite book in the world. I would probably never reread it, but I did enjoy my time in this world. I'll end up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. So that is it for everything that I completed in the month of May. Really quickly, I will tell you about what I'm currently reading, some of the first things that I'm going to be finishing up for June. So first, I'll start with my audiobook. I am listening to The Young Elites by Marie Lu. I'm not going to go too much into the plot of any of these right now, but I am enjoying this one. I only have about an hour left of the audiobook, so you'll definitely be hearing about this one in the beginning of June. I'm not totally sold on it, but it's okay. I am also reading an arc called How the Penguin Saved Veronica by Hazel Pryor. I'm a little bit more than halfway through this one, and it is such a fun adult contemporary so far. And I'm also reading a nonfiction book called Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. This is just a nonfiction piece that I'll talk more about in my mid-June wrap-up. I haven't gotten too far into this one yet to really know if it's doing anything for me, but we'll see. But that is it for my May wrap-up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and let me know your favorite read from May. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to go down and give it a big thumbs up, as well as hitting the subscribe button and the bell icon down below so that you never miss out on any of my content. So until next time, bye!